So yesterday we did an impromptu video and we're talking about New Mexico Aviation and how we wanted some avenue for us to have communications about what we do in New Mexico and what flying and aviation is about here, from all the different aspects that New Mexico Aviation has to offer, from airplanes to balloons to gliders to skydivers. We got some inquiries already about RC aircraft, so just a lot of wide topics that we're going to be able to cover here in New Mexico. But before we get into that, I kind of wanted to first thank everybody who has already subscribed to the Facebook page. This is going to be coming out on YouTube, and then we're going to be able to do our live streaming for our actual podcast. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have both our vlog, which is what you're seeing right now when we go out to different places, and you're going to see different videography that we do here at the airports or when we're flying. And then we're going to have our actual podcast, and that podcast will be published. And that's where we're going to bring in people to be able to do interviews with from the community, those professionals, those recreational pilots. And it's not just the pilots themselves. You know, there's so many things that encompass aviation in New Mexico: airport managers, operations people, ramp agents, aircraft mechanics, balloon repair shops, you name it. There's so many things that go into aviation that a lot of people don't think about on a day-to-day basis. And we want to show you what's here and all those talented people here in the land of enchantment, and why that's important. So a little bit about me. If you guys don't know, I am an avid balloon pilot. So we'll start back in the beginning. In the beginning, I had a father who is a pilot. He's got an airline transport rating. And since I was growing up, we were surrounded with my dad's two Piper Cherokee 235s, PA-28 235s. They actually were stationed here at this airport. So we're at Double Eagle Airport in Albuquerque, KAEG. And so when I was 3 years old, I was running around this airport. It's truly my home airport. And I was telling everybody that's here, that's helping produce this show today, there was a little pond that when I was 3 years old, I decided I wanted to go catch koi at the middle of December and ended up getting a cold because of it. So there's a lot of memories. I ran around places like this all over New Mexico. I ran around specifically this airport a lot. We're going to visit some of the old airports that are no longer there, and the ghost of those airports, like places like Coronado, that a lot of people that if you grew up in New Mexico Aviation, you remember well. But that's really where I got my fascination in flying and aviation, was because my father passed that down to me. Fast forward into my teenage years, and when I was 14 years old, I joined Civil Air Patrol. And that first summer, I actually had to get special permission because I didn't do some basic training beforehand. And I went to a flight school down in Hobbs, New Mexico. So I'm 15 years old, and we're starting to fly gliders. And the cool thing about that was the old Hobbs Army Airfield. And we brought a bunch of DPEs down, a bunch of instructors. There was about 20 of us cadets. Half of the cadets had already soloed the year before. And then you had all the newbies, and we were there for 2 weeks straight, and we went through all the procedures and everything. And at 15 years old, I was soloing gliders. Huge ego boost, huge confidence builder at the time. And unfortunately, I just didn't stick with it. There wasn't an avenue. So I get into my early 20s. I want to start flying airplanes. I never finished the glider certificate. Probably 21, 22 years old, started getting back into airplanes. I'd flown on a bunch of rides and had orientations, but never actually really manipulating controls in any type of flight training environment. So 22, 23 years old, I end up soloing in an airplane at the Aero Club at Kirtland Air Force Base. I had joined the Air Force at that time. I was 17 when I joined the Air Force. I was an F-16 aircraft mechanic. I was a crew chief on Vipers. And I just wanted to be around aviation my entire being, pretty much. So worked on airplanes, went to Iraq, came home, started learning how to fly, soloed when I was about 23, and then all of a sudden just life happened, which is so common with everybody's story about flying. You know, life happens and they put it on a back burner. Fast forward a couple more years later, I was about 28 years old, 29 years old. I ended up being a squadron commander in Civil Air Patrol again, and somebody said, hey, we're going to put all the balloon pilots that are coming on board into your squadron. And I remember standing in the back of the room and saying, hey, if you're interested in this balloon crap, one of the new pilots that came in, she was going to have some people go out and help crew. And I'm really thankful for that moment, because she looked at me and she pointed at me and go, you're flying tomorrow. And I was hooked. So actually my first certificates I got a private pilot certificate in lighter than air. From there, I trained at about 64 hours a time. I got my commercial ticket in lighter than air. Got my restriction taken off later that year because I was a hot air balloon pilot. Ended up going for my gas flight and doing my gas training. Got my restriction taken off, so I'm a commercial LTA pilot. Then probably sometime last year, I got back into the flying airplanes thing, and I am still a commercial pilot, but with student privileges in airplane single engine land. And so I got about 61 hours in airplanes. I'm going to hopefully take my check ride by the end of the month, so I'll have private privileges in airplanes. And luckily I found a job that's a job requirement. I'm actually the Aviation Safety and Education Administrator for the state of New Mexico. So just super blessed, and going on with this training and being able to be around the community that has really kind of taken me in. That's a lot of the big things that I want to share. And I want to share this journey, and I want to share all these different places that you can go here in New Mexico, all the different airports, or if it's a Saturday morning, we go find a field that we take off in and we go fly balloons, which is one of my passions. Flying, period, is a passion. And so that's really what this whole show is about, is New Mexico aviation and the passion of flight. And that's what we're here for. I don't like just talking at the camera, though. And so I had this thought. I was like, you know what? I want to have real conversations with somebody, and to be able to talk about what our experiences are. And somebody that struck me at a very short time into my training was a young pilot. We call him a young gun. He's in his 20s, but super impressed me. He's a commercial pilot, and I'm going to let him talk about himself a little bit more, but I have absolute respect for him as a pilot, as a balloonist, as a competition balloonist. He consistently beats me to the X when we compete, so I'm a little jealous of that. Maybe I got some more things to learn from him, but I'd like to introduce the co-host to this show.
What's up, everyone?
And it's Morgan Chando.
It's Morgan Chando. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you doing?
You know, another day.
Cool. So, I know we kind of throw around this idea a little bit. We thought about it with balloons. We thought about it with a bunch of different things. Probably for how long?
I don't know, maybe a year.
About a year. Yeah.
Just like heen and hawing about it.
Yeah, totally. And so with it, I don't know what just happened, but I was like, you know what? We need to talk about these things. We just had a competition
2 weeks ago?
About 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
which went really, really well, and it kind of re-sparked that whole, hey,
To do so.
yeah, let's talk about it. But we kind of expanded.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to talk about aviation in general. So if you could tell the viewers out there what your experience is in how you got involved in aviation, and specifically New Mexico aviation.
So, my name is Morgan. Lived in Albuquerque my entire life, except for 13 months of it, where I was born it was in Utah. But we moved here. My father got his rating in 2002, 2001, in that area, and that's private LTA as well as hot air balloon. Same thing, I guess. But he got his rating in 2001, but we got our balloon from another pilot named Bob Mass. Phenomenal pilot, has done well in state, taught me many things, taught a lot of pilots, got a lot of good things, including my father and myself. But he gave us our first balloon in 1999, and my father went on to get his rating, and ever since that point of my life, it's always been this drive of, I want to fly. I'd rather be in the sky than on the ground, unless it's a bad day. And I went through most of my younger years and teenage years just crewing for him and being there as much as I possibly could. And then I got to, the age of 17, and I thought I knew better than them, and decided to go off on my own path, and found that that wasn't the greatest path, and came back into ballooning around when I turned 2021. And in that year, I was able to buy a bunch of balloon stuff, got one of my balloons flying again, and in, what was it, 2016, I got my private rating with Ray Barrow, who is, again, a phenomenal pilot, as well as taught me a lot. And then I continued to fly, and it got to the point where people kept coming up to me about flying competition or just flying more, and I fly a lot as it is, and we finally had people that I wanted to be around consistently, and especially in competition, and Will and a few others talked me into jumping into the competition boat, and ever since then it's just consistent competition flying, whether it's the Racer, my own 80,000 cubic foot balloon, and I've never had a day without thinking about balloons or flying or airplanes or something that gets me in the sky. I'll even ride an elevator to get up. But I'm relatively simple with that stuff. That's kind of just how the life goes.
Right.
And I've fallen in love with it. Now I'm traveling around the country doing great things, flying balloons. I'm hoping to go to Montana soon and fly up there and just keep traveling, keep flying. Never really it hasn't died for me yet, and I don't think it ever will. But that's how it goes.
You got your certificate right around the time I got my certificate.
I think my private was just yours was in December of 15. Mine was in April of 16.
Yeah, so we're right around the same time. We were going through training at the same time.
Oh, yeah. I remember study sessions with you and a few other people, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by it's a community.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody kind of comes together. And then you went on to get your commercial certificate.
I did, and I never looked back. I love it.
Right. So it's nice to be paid to fly.
Oh, yeah. It's got its perks.
Yeah. So you said you just like anything that gets in the air and those type of things. And I think it's interesting because obviously we're very immersed in the balloon community. But that's not just what this is going to be about. We're obviously sitting at a airport. The one that I bounced down the runway a couple times this last week.
That I'm jealous of, I might say.
And I think that's the cool thing is there's so many things that we can do. And most people in aviation, once they get into it, I say it's a bug that it bites them and there's no cure for that disease afterwards.
Not at all.
And there's plenty of poems and different sayings that share the same type of adage that you'll never get tired of it. You'll always look skyward. But we see New Mexico a little bit differently than other people.
Oh, without a doubt.
I'm approaching the runway here, 70, 65 knots, somewhere in there.
I fly over the runway.
Yeah.
I go over.
Setting up a 3-mile final, I remember there's flights that I may have gotten 3 miles in a balloon, so it's a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's what we want to really bring to everybody is all those different environments and the different places to go, different travels. Now, you've said you've traveled all over the United States. Now, have you traveled to different events here in New Mexico?
Oh, yeah. New Mexico, we Gallup, Angel Fire. I think there's one in Artesia. There's quite a few here. I've just done a couple of them, and definitely hoping to do more. But the Gallup is one of my favorites, just because you get to fly on those rocks, and it's not something you get to do all the time. But when you do get to fly in it, it's probably one of the most peaceful flights you can experience. But that's as well as Angel Fire. It's a valley of flying that it's so peaceful, so calm. You get to fly around some amazing people. And the camaraderie there is just phenomenal. Everybody shakes your hand, gives you a smile, and nobody ever looks back at you.
Yeah, so kind of talking about that camaraderie in the community, I think that's also what a big part of this show is going to be about, is being able to talk to people, get their experiences, and see their insights onto why they have a passion for aviation, and especially that land of enchantment, that New Mexico flying that we've obviously fell in love with. I've flown all over the United States also with the balloons, being an instructor pilot with Civil Air Patrol and flying the corporate balloon. I've gotten to go to Wisconsin and flown up in Colorado before, and it is very different, very unique, and it's a great experience, but I do love flying here.
Oh, yeah.
Probably
all the states you've flown in specifically?
Oh, I'd have to go
through the logbook.
You go through the logbook, yeah. That's why it's my my story of love, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
there's
the love
that.
book.
It's where the love book. I like that. So yeah, that's really what we want to talk about though, is that community. And we know fixed wing pilots, helicopter pilots, powered parachutes, like we were talking earlier. You know, I put up the post earlier to come look at this site, and we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be doing these vlogs, and immediately somebody comes in. Hey, can we talk about RC aircraft? Hey, can we talk about skydiving? And I think all of those things, I'm fascinated with it.
Oh, yeah.
So I think being able to talk to those people would be great.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing I think we're going to touch on is, you know, policies here in New Mexico, policymakers. And one thing that I've seen is everybody has their niche. So we're balloon pilots.
Oh, yeah.
So we know a lot about ballooning.
That's a given.
But we may not know everything about the airplane world.
I don't.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, you know, a single engine land airplane pilot who's got less than 200 hours, they're just beginning. They're not going to have the same view of it as a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 hour airline transport rated pilot who's flying for a living. And so being able to open up that discussion between all those niche communities, so it's more of a unified thing. And then the other big one I really want to point out is, you know, we got friends in Texas and Colorado and
Arizona even.
yeah, some out in Vegas that we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a good story.
That is a good story. That will be later.
Oh, yeah.
But being at Fiesta, it's an international event, so we have friends from all over the world. We want to bring to you why you want to come here. So everybody who's out there flying, you know, most people think, oh, New Mexico, well, why would I want to stop there? So we're going to do not just the vlogging thing, not just the podcast, but we're going to try to build that community, you know, host some barbecues maybe out here. Maybe you guys come in and fly into Double Eagle. I know my instructor would love it to have a big old barbecue out here. So he's quite familiar with this airport. I think he has a little bit of an affinity to it.
Yeah.
It makes me land on the runway a lot, so obviously. But yeah, if we could bring everybody together and have that conversation. So, what are your thoughts on what we're doing?
I think it's really cool. Something that our community, specifically to ballooning, is we don't have the connection with really the internet. That's kind of the problem right now, is that we're so far in the history that we don't want to move forward. And I think this is going to push us there, and I think we can actually do something really good. And whether it's funny, whether it's serious, whether we're going through the FAR names, which is, I don't want to put anybody to sleep, but, you know, we can read that word for word. I'll sleep.
Please don't.
But, you know, we can go through so much stuff, even private ratings in commercial, and just what it took to get there. And this video is going to help in every aspect.
Yeah.
Get people informed and just laugh a little, have a good time, chime in to see what we're doing, where we are, and where we're going next.
And I think that's across the board, you know, just from the job that I have, getting to see what the age group is and the demographics. You know, there's a lot of people who are doing great things. I'm going to drop a couple names here, but Jeff Giltke does a lot of really cool ultralight videos that I just stare at all the time. He's local here in New Mexico.
Oh, that's great. That's cool.
And, you know, they flew their trikes down to a fly-in out of Lordsburg, New Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, it was super neat to
Is
see.
it bad that I don't know where that place is?
Lordsburg, New Mexico, down by the Boot Hill of New Mexico. Beautiful airport. Really, really nice airport.
We'll go down there.
Yes, we will. But we put 45 airplanes in there, plus the ultralights. It was really cool, just gathering to see. And New Mexico Pilots Association is really active here, but we want to help everybody get that story out.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, they have a lot of fly-ins. They do a lot of backcountry stuff.
That's cool.
So I know I was showing you some of Trent Palmer's stuff.
That was
there's another name drop, which is really awesome. Those type of things are what inspire people. And I think that's the big thing, is this is an inspiration and a dream that is definitely achievable. But a lot of people don't know that it's achievable. And if we bring you along with a lot of those adventures and you get to come see what we're seeing and experience it with us, maybe you guys will be motivated to come out and pick up a new hobby, pick up a new passion, come fly with us and be part of our community. And even if it's just to come hang out at the airport, which so many people think for some reason is like off limits and taboo. No, if I could spend 18 hours on an airport a day, I would, because it just feels like home. Or out in the middle of a field after we go flying balloons and tailgating.
That's my favorite.
And that's what the community is about.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, that whole, whether it's airplane, balloon, glider, whatever, anything that goes in the sky, those people, they don't want to hang out with each other.
Yeah.
Well, I want to learn more about the airplane side. I want to learn more about skydiving. Frankly, I don't think I'd ever do it, but I'd love to learn about it.
well, maybe we'll get you
Yeah.
to jump out of an airplane.
At some point. But it's perfectly good.
Okay.
I don't know about it.
Okay.
But there's a lot of stuff that I want to learn about the other sides of aviation. I lacked that information for a long time. I went specifically to balloons. And I want to know more about everything on it. If I can pick up a little thing here and there, then I think I'm doing pretty good.
And that's a big one. We're going to be doing interviews with industry leaders. We're going to be talking to flight schools here in New Mexico. We're going to be talking about, places that you can get jobs if you want to, or fly out of, rent airplanes, FBOs, the airport managers, the people who take care of the facilities here and what they're looking at. Part of this is going to be fun. Part of this is going to be educational. And we just want you to be able to come join us on our adventure flying through the land of enchantment.
It's a beautiful state.
Cool. Got anything else?
I think I'm okay.
I think we're good.
We'll see you next time.
Definitely. Take it easy.